Well, greetings, brethren, and a very happy Sabbath to you on this 7th day of May 2016 on the pagan Roman calendar. It's the 29th day of the first month on God's holy sacred calendar. And there's one more day to go on this first month. In the first month of the year, there's 30 days. In the second month, coming up next, there is 29 days. And God does that on his calendar because the lunar cycle is 29 and a half days. That's approximately. The actual figure's, some crazy number, bunch of digits, but it's basically roughly 29 and a half days. And so when you do 30 days one month and 29 days the next month, then you're balancing out the moon cycles, the lunar cycles. Most important thing about that, though, is when the next feast day comes up. And there's a feast day that is kind of an emergency feast day. It's the only feast for which God provides a second alternative feast day for, the Passover, which is not a holy day like the other feast days are, but it's the most sacred day of the year. It is so important to God. When I say it's not a holy day, some of you may say, well, why are you saying that? Well, because it's to be a holy day means it's sanctified from working on the day, and your Passover, you can work on the Passover day. Of course, you don't work on the eve before Passover when we're told to do the foot washing. So in the sense of God saying it's for a holy convocation, and there's no holy convocation on Passover. I know for a long time we would meet together for the Passover foot washing ceremony the evening before when we were a large group. Mr. Armstrong liked to do it that way and make sure everybody was on the same page and together on that. But after you grow so far, and originally Passover was done in the home. It was not in a commanded assembly back from the very beginning. For a while in the church in these latter days, we did an assembly, but even then you could do it at home. Unless your local pastor said, no, I want you there. And he basically did want the whole congregation there. And since the pastor, when there is a congregation with a pastor over people in a congregation, that pastor accounts for your soul. God says he holds him to that. So he has a responsibility for the people under his service and guidance and lead. And Mr. Armstrong, for a long time, wanted us to do it together, but now you can do it apart. And some of you haven't done it. Some of you missed it. And if you're one of those or have a friend who missed it, God provides, it's the only one God provides a redoing of that particular feast day a month later, 30 days later, in the second month on the same day of the month, a month later. In other words, on the 14th, we normally do it on the 14th of the first month. For those who had to be away or missed it or somehow were out of the loop spiritually and have just come back and say, hey, if you just come back or you have a friend that's just come back into spiritual relevance, to put it that way, or to have some way to put it, should they keep the second Passover at this point if they've just come back into a spiritual awareness? Yes, they should. And they should contact a minister regarding it. You can have them email or call me. And we'll be conducting that on the internet here with doing the same thing we did during the first month, playing a recording of Mr. Armstrong hosting that last Passover that he conducted before he died. We'll be doing that on the 14th of the second month, as you can see on the calendar on the left side of your screen. Now look over on the right side, and you can see that same red dot that is on the place of the 14th for the second month on the Hebrew calendar. On the right side over there is the Gregorian calendar. And so that makes that come up, well, you got to really look at the day before, for the evening of the day before. It makes it come up on the 21st of June will be the second Passover. I'm just emphasizing, pointing that out for those of you who may have friends who need that. Okay, so I'm going to leave that up on the screen behind me while I talk to you. Some of you know, some of you may yourselves maybe had some problems or whatever health-wise, but it's funny, God gives me the strength during these live telecasts. I did miss Thursday night. Some of you know I've been very ill this past week, and I think God's helping me see something He wants me to overcome where it's just me, brethren. I'm just sharing icebreaker time with you. This may not apply to you. But for me, maybe it does. Maybe it does for some of you even more than it applies to me. But in some ways, especially when I get sick, I can be the biggest baby in the whole world. I can overween like you won't believe. And if somebody shows me a little loving attention, well, I just may eat that up And so that's another thing that God is showing me, that in certain fields or activity or professions or callings that God gives you, we have to use an extra measure of reserve, more so than if you did not have a certain calling. I'm learning that. I've been a little slow to learn that, so I have offended a few people, I am sure. But if you really have God's Spirit, God says with His Spirit, we're not offended easily. And, being humans, it's a good thing if we don't expect perfection out of other humans. I mean, go back and look at the early apostles. Here you've got Peter standing there telling Jesus, I'm sticking with you, baby, all through it all. Your crucifixion, everything. And Christ looks at him and says, Peter, before the cock crows twice, you will have denied me 3 times. Before the cock crows twice, you will have denied me thrice. To use the poetic rhyme the King James Version renderers used. And as that cock crowed a couple of times, as you see the movies portraying this, there's Peter with this shocked look on his face, remembering the words Christ told him after he just denied Christ vehemently with cursing, it says, thrice, 3 times. So, brethren, but after we have God's Spirit, we are to be growing and overcoming. And as Mr. Armstrong put it, as when he was explaining how when we're first baptized, God only gives us a small percentage, a small measure of His Spirit. And Mr. Armstrong gave an exemplary, a certain amount, a certain number percentage-wise as an illustration for us. He said, maybe God gives you about 5% when you're baptized. But then after you use it, Acts 5:29, or is that 32, that says, in order to have God's Spirit, we got to use it. Let me get that exactly right. Acts 5. Both of those, 29 and 32, are key verses. And sometimes this old brain will get them reversed. Acts 5. Let's go to Acts 5:32 first. It says, and we are as witnesses to these things. I think this is the one I want. It says, and so is also the Holy Spirit, which God gives to them who obey Him. That is the one I want. 39, though, says this, or 29, says this. Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey God rather than men. So when you've got men, and that's another key verse, essential to keep in mind, for when in a situation where you have men over you, either in government or even in a church situation. Of course, there's something about a church situation you need to keep in mind. I'll explain in a moment. But when you have men over you that tell you to go do something where ordinarily you would be under their authority, but they tell you to do something contrary to God's word, realizing, of course, that they may punish you and may have the power over you to punish you in some way, maybe some very undesirable way. And yet, here it's explained we ought to obey God rather than men. That even means you can't use the excuse, well, my boss ordered me to do it. He ordered me to work on the Sabbath, so I had to do it because my boss said so. No. This says, in a case like that, you continue to obey God, even though whatever it is, you may wind up in trouble with your boss, and he may put some punishment upon you because you refuse him. But you've got a duty, an obligation. It's not just a right, it's also a duty to obey God rather than man. When man gives you some man over you with authority over you gives you an instruction in order to do something contrary to God's word, you must refuse it. But then verse 32 is the one I wanted to make the point that God gives his Spirit to them who obey him. So when you first start out, when you're first baptized, God gives you a small measure of his Spirit. And as I said, Mr. Armstrong gave an example of maybe 5%. You know, he's not holding God to 5%, but it could be 2 or 3 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, whatever. God gives you a small measure of his Spirit. But as we, Acts 5:32, as we obey, God gives his Spirit to those who obey. Once we're showing ourselves obedient small ways, then a little stronger tests come along, or you obey. God gives you more of his Spirit to help you to the next level where he'll test you a little more. You know, you obey, you get more Spirit. To the point where at the time Mr. Armstrong was explaining this to us, he said, "Brethren, I hope by this point in time that we're all..." No, before I tell you that, let me tell you what he was saying. When you first baptize, if God gives you 5% of his Spirit, he says that means you're still 95% carnal. A little bit of good humor Mr. Armstrong used there. And then what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. Then as you grow, say maybe you've got 15% of God's Spirit. Well, that means you're only 85% carnal. And then you grow a little more and you're 20% Spirit, you're only 80% carnal. And he said, "Brethren, I hope by this point in time that you're at least 51% spiritual and only 49% carnal." And he said it with a little smile on his face, a little grandfatherly smile, as if, you get the humor. I'm sure you get the humor in that. Mr. Armstrong was capable and often exhibited some outstanding grandfatherly humor, which is illustrative of God the Father. God has the ability to have humor, and even says he laughs at those who mock him. And God will have the last laugh against those who mock him. Those who mock him will not be laughing at all when God finishes when he finishes them off. And, in prophecy, that's something to keep in mind. What's our overall situation on prophecy? Let's go for a moment. Now, I'm just talking to you today for several reasons. We'll go to that chart in a moment, but let me please explain something to you. I'm talking to you because, as I mentioned to you, I've been very ill ever since I helped fight a forest fire. I helped the fire department fight a forest fire that came up from the forest behind my homes about a month ago. In fact, it was on April 4, and this is the 7th of May, so a few days more than a month ago. I helped the fire department fight a big, spreading fire in the forest behind me. I was raking a wide trench. I had, a week or two before, I had already burned some fire trenches on my property, which those were very helpful. I didn't have to worry about those areas on my property. other parts that I hadn't gotten to yet, I had to rake like mad to create I created a fire break. That's what the word I was meant to use, that fire break, about 10 feet wide. And where I did that, sure enough, the fire stopped and didn't pass, that came up from the forest, didn't pass that onto my property. Where the fire department had a dozen men out there spraying with little sprayers, it was too far back in the woods to get from the street to get their fire engine hoses back there. So they're carrying these little canisters of water and maybe some chemicals or whatever, and they're just barely spraying stuff. They could put out little pieces of fire here and there, but the fire's spreading around them. And I think after a while they noticed, well, look, the fire's going right around us. Where Gilbreath is up there raking a fire break, the fire just stops. Duh. You know, I saw a fireman, I think it was during the Days of Unleavened Bread, was it? Yeah, I believe it was. When I went to a restaurant, had a meal without leavened bread, and there was out front, I was just talking to the people and told them how I just helped to put out a fire with the fire department, and I just kind of laughing as I made the observation. I said, you know, it's interesting. I said, there was a dozen firemen out there, and what they were doing, the fire just spread right by them. I said, up where I was, and none of them were up there helping me with that to keep it away from going on in my land up here. They were just trying to protect the forest from it spreading back there. But this forest part up here, there was some point where it would burn out on this side, but it was still gone up onto my property some. But they saw I had some other breaks over here. But I was doubly making sure it wasn't going to burn this median area in here and become a mess. So I was raking like mad, and they noticed at my fire break, the fire didn't cross that. So then the chief got the idea. He says, guys, and I'm standing there when he did it. He says, I'm going to call the forestry department and ask them to send a bulldozer over and cut a fire break like Gilbreath's doing up here and cut it down through there, since this thing going past all y'all. And so I mentioned these factors to a couple that were standing out front while we were waiting for our numbers to be called to have a seat in the restaurant. And the man spoke up and said, I had no idea when I was saying this that I was speaking to a retired fireman. And the man said to me, he said, firemen don't know how to put out fires. And I looked at him and I thought, well, look, I wasn't really trying to put firemen down. I was thankful those men were there, and I was very thankful they called the bulldozer in, too, because that protected my neighbors. If it had cut across the area above the creek, it could have just ripped right down to an area where there are houses, people living in. And it was spreading rapidly because things were dry, and the fire was just spreading. And smoke all over the place, and I'm breathing the smoke all day long, but I'll get to that point in a moment. But that man I was speaking with, who said back to me, he said, firemen don't know how to put out a fire. And I looked at him like I didn't really mean to criticize men who serve us as firemen. I was only just making an observation that it amazed me that what I was doing, they didn't seem at first to think about, well, why don't we just, get our rakes and rake a break instead of spraying with these little tiny dinky, hardly spraying anything, canisters. It looks like we're doing something out here, a dozen of us, but it isn't effective. Fire just going around and through us and on down. We go on down, get ahead front of it again, but it don't, their little sprayers don't really stop it. And so because there's wind and stuff, it's just, they were ineffective. But getting ahead of it and digging a break, hey, you get the break wide enough and a fire burned to the break, and then ain't nothing else to burn. It goes out, unless there's real excessive wind, which there was not. So the chief, when I went back up, where did I go? I went up to get something to bring back down with me. And the chief standing there near the fire engine, and the men, they all came up to get them, or a number of them took a break to come up and get some bottles with electrolytes in it because of breathing all that smoke. Oh, that's what I want. I went to get me some water, and I got a bucket full of little bottles of water, and I offered it to the firemen. You know, most of them already had. Well, we got our stuff with juice with electrolytes in it, so we're drinking that. One or two of them drank some of the water I brought for them. But the chief was standing there, and he says, that fire break seems to be working. I'm going to call the forestry department and get a bulldozer out here. You may have to pay for it. Hey, wait a minute. That fire didn't start on my land. I don't know why I had to pay for it, but I didn't say anything. I thought, hey, listen, let's just get the fire out for my neighbor's sake, you know? And regardless, we'll deal with that type of thing later. Let's just get the fire out best way. Yeah, bulldozer sounded great to me. I was like, well, how fast can you get him here? They got him there pretty quick, and I let him plow through one of my fences and, you know, just totally smash and tear that fencing down. And he dropped this thing in the back that big old bulldozer. So, man, that thing knocked down huge tall trees like they were just matchsticks. I could hardly believe it. Wow. And but he dropped this thing in the back that cut a trench, wide trench as he rolls along. I thought, wow, man, that thing can make a trench fast. It's just as he plows along, big old wide and deep trench. And so he comes on to a point where he's about to head down the hill through trees. And I say, well, hey, why don't you come over here where the land is more gradual and there are less trees to go through. And while I'm speaking to I had redirected the forestry guy one time where he was going to knock down a whole bunch of difficult to get through fencing. I said, hey, why don't you come through my fence over here? Actually, the fence he was going to come through would have been a neighbor's fence. I said, why don't you come through my fence? You know, I'm here to give you the okay, and you tear my fence up, I don't care. So he went through my fence instead of the neighbor's fence, and I came through my portion of the land rather than the neighbor's land, and got ahead of it in a place that was good to get ahead of it. I actually recommended he come on down a little further and go down a more gentle area, which wouldn't have been so steep hill and such a huge and big trees to have to knock over and get through. But as I went up to tell him that, the fireman stopped me and said, hey, you leave him alone. Let him do what he wants to do. I said, look, I was just going to suggest he take this route over here. Look at it. I said, there are not as many trees. It's more gradual. He can get down there quicker and burn up more of my land. I don't care. In fact, I thought that'd be good. Clean it off a little better, and go down the easier way for that forestry ranger with the bulldozer. And they didn't even let him hear the suggestion. They said, you let him go where he wants to go. I said, fine, but I think you should at least tell him that he's got the option to take this easier route down here, you know. And they wouldn't tell him, and they let him knock through a steep area with huge trees, and he knocked them down all right, and he curved around and got down, went down by a stream that goes down area, and cut a path. And then he had to, once he got down to the creek, he had to come over and then come back up. He went past the easy to go down area and came back up another hard, difficult area, just to have a second break, just in case that first break. And it did get past the first break a little bit. He had to go down and under it again because he was, you know, by the time they decided to call a guy to create a break, that fire was making headway. Anyway, but that fireman, that couple I was talking to, he said, firemen don't know how to put out a fire. This is the man in front of the restaurant I'm telling you about now. And so he said, so I said to him, I said, oh, sir, my heart felt bad then. I said, listen, sir, I didn't mean to criticize the fire department. I said, I'm thankful they were there. I said, it just seemed amazing to me that me, a novice, who's never really had any firefighting experience and all that, just been in the Boy Scouts and stuff like that. I said, it was amazing to me that, you know, my idea to do a fire break, and they saw that was effective, gave them the idea to call the forestry department and get them in there with a bulldozer and create a fire break, you know. to stop that thing was spreading. You know, he said, well, listen. He says, I didn't take any offense by what you said. He says, I'm a retired fireman, and he says, I can tell you, firemen don't know how to fight a fire. Now, I think he was being humorous at that point. I don't know. But he was with his wife, and they were out for a nice evening, and he was retired. But I just responded back to him, well, sir, I'm very thankful the fire department was there. I'm very thankful they called that forestry department to get that bulldozer down there for the sake of my neighbors. And somewhat me too. That fire could have maybe gotten off into areas back up to my property that I wouldn't have been able to create enough break for. Yeah, I was trying to stay ahead of it. I knew there was a fire potential from that forest, and I was already 2 weeks before been creating fire breaks on my property, which I plan to do even more so next year ahead of time because of what can happen from back there. But here's the point, brethren. This is why I'm just talking to you today, and this is an icebreaker from some of you who look to me, so you know me a little better. And because I could use your prayers, and because we are the new commandment Christ gave us. And before I mention that, I know there's 2 or 3 things I left hanging I got to come back and make comments on. But I prayed very hard this morning and asked God before I got in here, I said, Father, I'm not feeling well this morning. I can't think. I don't know what to play from Mr. Armstrong this morning. I don't know what to say or what to introduce. I don't feel good. What they told me in the doctor's office about my blood pressure being borderline high, I said, I'm feeling the effect of that as I can hear my heart beating faster than it should be beating, because the high blood pressure must mean that my arteries are filled with plaque, maybe from that smoke from the fire all day or whatever, because I usually try to eat organic, eat well, I take ACV, apple cider vinegar, twice a day, at least once a day. Sometimes I forget the second time, to help keep plaque cleaned out and that kind of thing. A lot of you ladies know the value of that. And I see your writings on Facebook, and I follow. When I see y'all make some good suggestions on there, I check them out. They sound logical, and they square even with what God says in Psalm 103, where he tells us he makes good things for our mouth so that our youth is renewed like the eagles. Let me see if I can find that for you. Psalm 103. I'm going to start right from the beginning. It's about verse 4 or 5 only. Bless the eternal Lord God, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. Bless the eternal Lord God, O my soul, and forget not all his benefits, who forgives all, A-L-L, all your iniquities, who heals all your diseases, who redeems your life from destruction, who crowns you with loving kindness and tender mercies. Verse 5, this is where I want to take us to, right here. Who satisfies your mouth with good things, so that your youth is renewed like the eagles, to be as if it were the youth of a soaring eagle. And who does so by satisfying your mouth with good things. How does he satisfy your mouth with good things? Things that are tasty, taste good, that you eat. And through those good things that he made for us, that he satisfies our mouth with, he restores our health. So God is saying, don't just come to me for healing when you eat nothing but fast food junk filled with chemicals and yuck. Change your diet and study, become knowledgeable, learn the things that are good for this or that, and while we still have them available, go get them and eat them. Now, we get into a situation where they're not available, then he's going to be more likely to just flat outright heal you of this and that, because you could not do what you needed to be wise to do. But when you can be wise to do it, we do it. Now, I don't want to criticize those who I would see when I first came in the church, who they didn't have a lot of money, they couldn't always buy the best or whatever, or maybe even have the means for studying out what to do or this or that. I'd hear some of the old fellows, when I first came in the church, pray when they'd pray over the food, and God, please remove any harmful effects from the harmful things, the junk that's in the food that we may be about to partake of together in this certain fellowship where we'd all be eating together. And I would think, I was impressed by that. I thought, wow, what a request, and God could honor that. Just pass the junk through your kidney without getting hung up there, and, you go on. And sometimes in certain situations, you got to ask God to do that for you. So there's some wisdom there. But brethren, I will appreciate your prayers that when God's ready and feels like I've learned what he needs to learn, that he will heal me of the effects of all that smoke I breathed on April 4 while I spent the day helping the fire department put out that fire, breathing that smoke like the firemen did. Of course, I think they may have had something over their mouths, but I just out there, They told me in the doctor's office when I went, I usually don't even go to doctors, but I did go this past Wednesday because I couldn't hear out of either ear, and it was getting worse. And I was very thankful that here's what the doctor found and told me. He says, all right, you've got wax. He examined my ears. He said, you got hardened wax in your ears. That's why you can't hear. And he said, I can't even see your eardrum, it's hardened. And so after he did the first bits that he did on this left ear, and then he got to where I got some pain. He said, okay, I got what he referenced as 90% of the stuff out of there. And then he says, I can't, he said, the wax I can see now is right next to your eardrum, on your eardrum. And he says, it's so hardened, we need to soften that up before I try to get it out so it don't burst your eardrum. And I was already feeling pain. I was holding back from making any noise until finally the pain got so sharp that I said, ow, ouch, and the doctor stopped. He said, oh, was that painful? No, I just love to holler ouch for the fun of it, Doc. You scare all your patients away, and have you charge me more when you lose patients. No. He said, I think I better stop and we better reschedule you another visit for next week, and I'll give you have you take some things to help loosen that up before next week, and then I'd hopefully be able to get the rest of it. Well, he went ahead and did this other ear some, but he didn't do it very much long at all since he's got me scheduled to come back now. And I can kind of hear out of this ear, but because he didn't do very much in cleaning up this one, I still can't hear very well out of this side. This is the side I usually put my earphone monitor in so I can tell what's going on, especially when I do the newscast. And when the news stories start and my microphone is still on in the studio, it cuts off the speaker in the studio when the microphone is turned on. And the only way I can know that the movie clip, the news clip, started with the audio and what they're saying is because I have an earpiece in, but I can't hear out of this ear. So thankfully today I'm not playing anything that I need that for, so I'm just not using it. But I can't hear very well still out of this ear. But it's just wax. And I've been doing some of the stuff he told me to do, except he wanted me to take an antibiotic. And I said, Doc, I don't like to do that. I said, there's some other way you can still work with me. I don't take the antibiotic. He thought about it for a second. It was kind of like, I never had anybody ask me this before. But he said, I told him, I do everything as much as I can natural. I never take medications. I don't take antibiotics. He thought for a second, and he said, yeah, I can work with you. Well, as long as you're paying my bill, I can work with you. So, anyway, he didn't give me a prescription for the antibiotics. He wanted me to take some hydrogen peroxide. Now, I know many of you, I even have friends, my dad even would say, it's okay, use some of that. Well, I'm a little bit afraid of that, and I have heard some health people express some concerns about it because it is a poison. But But I went by the health store, and they sell a hydrogen peroxide that's very pure and very strong. And I was almost about to buy it, but I still had reservations, especially with it being strong. And I read on there, it said, be sure and dilute this. And I'm thinking, well, dilute it with what? You better be using pure water to dilute it. So as I talked to one of the elderly, one of the younger men there was saying, yeah, you just, go ahead and use this. It won't hurt your ear. And I'm still thinking, yeah, I still don't like the idea of this. That's just me. Now, some of you may say, oh, Steve, you're being too picky. Well, maybe I am. But the elderly lady behind the counter, when I expressed my concerns to her, she says, use some mullein with garlic instead. She said, I won't use that hydrogen peroxide either, especially that one. It's too strong. I said, I won't use any in my ear. She said, use the, so I said, well, let me see a bottle of that. So she got me a little bottle of mullein, an herb called mullein mixed with some garlic. And now, for that little 1 ounce, it was much more expensive per ounce than that bottle of pure hydrogen peroxide. But the total cost, because that was a big bottle of hydrogen peroxide, the total cost was actually less for this, about $20 for that little bottle, than for that bigger bottle of hydrogen peroxide. But I think maybe $25, $29, I forget exactly dollars for that hydrogen peroxide. So I only paid $20, got that. It only takes a few drops. And I also have some sweet oil, and you heat that up 3 times a day, and I need to be sure I'm doing that 3 times a day. I've been lazying out. I haven't been doing that. So I'm going to, starting tomorrow, I did do it this morning. I heated it up while I was eating some cereal and put a few drops in just this ear only. And I've been using, yes, some of you that know probably about to write me and say, Steve, get the earwax candles and burn them, and put the pointed end in the ear and burn the other end. I've been doing that. Yeah, and I can hear the crackling. I can hear the stuff being sucked out. And that helped. This ear wasn't totally open after the doctor. Those wax candle things, I helped do that. And this ear must really need a real lot of help because even with the earwax candles and the sweet oil and the mullein garlic, it's still got a ways to go. But there's another issue I'm wrestling with. Extreme innervation, extreme lack of energy. Right now I have some, but at other times my energy just seems to go wham down to near zero, and I have to practically crawl into my bed. Oh, you're getting old, Steve. Well, yeah, maybe I am, but I acknowledge that. But this is, I think, beyond that. This is maybe like the lady who gave me the exam in the doctor's office. She said, you got a lot of toxins in you since that fire, and you need to detox. Or either that or the health store told me, one or the other, you need to detox. So, okay, yeah, I'm going to try to do what I can to, and I've got protein, I've got stuff. I bought a bottle of tonic for detoxing. So I'm working on that. I'm working on it, brethren. I'm working on it. It did cause me to miss Thursday night. So, yes, I'll appreciate your prayers that God help me health-wise. And then asking you that as part of what Christ gave us as what he called a new command. In the Holy Spirit, and some things are always, like Mr. Armstrong said, in the spiritual realm, things are always new, dynamically new. And he said the new command Christ gave us, to love one another. Of course, one another didn't exist back in Old Testament times. We who exist today, we've only been born since Christ, and so new command for us. And he said it was for us. And he was speaking in mind with Pentecost, with the New Testament church in mind, that he was building. Matthew 16:18, I will build my church, my temple, the body of Christ, to be the body that will be my wife. Christ thinking, speaking. And so Christ will build his church, and he said a new command he gives us, his church, the body, his wife to be, which won't include all of old ancient Israel. It'll include only those prophets and those to whom God gave his Holy Spirit, which were few among them. We will be the bride, we'll be the body, we are the church, the wife of Christ. the wife-to-be of Christ. He's the husband in waiting, the groom in waiting. And oh, what a glorious, glorious day that's going to be. But he said, a new command I give you, to love one another. And he says in one place, I can't think of the exact scripture right now, but some of you know this. He says in one place, when one of you are hurting, the rest of the body hurts with them. When one of you is full of joy or have something to glory over, the rest of the body glories with you, rejoices with you. So we're a body. And we're a body that should pull together. And when one part of the body's hurting, the rest of the body, well, you know the example, like when you stump your little toe, why, you feel it all over in your head. Just you limp along, the whole body suffers when that toe is hurting. You know, mentally it's driving you nuts until you get some relief on that toe. That's just a little example how one part of the body suffers, the rest of the body suffers. One part of the body is rejoicing, exuberant, has something to celebrate. The rest of the body celebrates. I wish I had their picture handy I could put up. I'm going to try to do it between now and June when they will have their 45th wedding anniversary coming up. And Martha and Warren Beatty, Marty, we called her Marty during college days. My freshman year, I think Warren was a senior and Marty was maybe a junior. I'm not sure, but in June they have a 45th wedding anniversary coming up. That'll just be 5 years short of 50 years. And you know, Mr. Armstrong and his wife Loma had 50 years of marriage minus 3 months, just 3 months, and it would have been 50 years. And that's something to note. 45 is something to note. I think there's even some reference for 45 that's kind of cool. I'll look that up between now and when that's coming up. But now let me cover where the holes I was going to try to cover for you today. And brethren, I'm just talking to you today. I asked God what to do. I said, when I open my mouth, please fill it. And I believe He is doing that. And so I'm going to talk to just, without mentioning your names, I'm going to talk to a few of you about things I'm aware of with the inspiration I get between now and time to close up today. Referencing that point about when one in the body is suffering, the rest of the body suffers. When one rejoices, the rest of the body rejoices. There's a young lady in the northeast of the country who, now some of you will know who I mean because you might have seen her public expression on a social media on the internet. She just mentioned that she had a great need to get away, to run away, as she put it, because of feeling so unloved. Now, she did get a lot of response and attention and a lot of invitations to go here or go there, with people opening up their doors to her, even down in Australia and various places. And even a lot of people from different religions responded to her. And I even sent her an invitation that I know some families here where she could come here and she could help some of the brethren. There's a brother in the church here that she's real fond of that has been very helpful to her as she had some problems a few years back where he helped reorient her. And then she's asked me to help her with a few things, and one of them was a spiritual misunderstanding that she said, "Hey, I get it, I see," and then she wound up having to fight her whole family over that, and she felt like she has to do both what she now understands is correct day to keep Pentecost on, Sunday, but also keep it with a family that's still keeping it on Monday. All right, I'm probably giving away more than maybe I should. Let me tell some of you more who it is, but if you're going to pray for the person, that may be fine. And sometimes we need prayers like that where we just don't feel loved. I remember Aaron Dean telling me just before Mr. Armstrong died that Mr. Armstrong felt like nobody loved him. He said he heard him say in prayer one time, and God, nobody loves me, nobody cares, gives a hoot about me. If he could only see now how respected by those who've remained faithful God's end-time apostle is, and how recognized as God's end-time apostle he is by a significant number of people. I put it that way because, there are some who have wrong ideas. All right, now, what else should I cover today, brethren? I think it'd be a good idea. Yeah, I told you I was going to go to that chart. We'll go to that in just a moment. But let me just emphasize this. Repetition is a good form of emphasis. This would be, since Christ wants to hear from us in prayer, he gets to know you from your prayers, and some of you have told me, I don't know what to pray about. Well, I'm constantly hammering on you, Luke 21:36, pray about the things in the daily world news. Some of you said, I watch it, I still have a problem praying. Well, I've been trying to focus more on stories that will really punch you in the heart on Nightcast News. I had one the other night, Tuesday, Wednesday night, Monday night, one night this week after the fire up in Canada, that wildfire that caused 88,000 people to have to evacuate their homes, and many of the homes were just burned down to nothing, and the people were ordered to leave and go back in and take nothing because the fire was just right there on them. And people lost everything. You could see ladies crying their hearts out as they were trying to tell about the story. All of a sudden, they'd just be hit with emotion that I just lost everything. I just lost everything. And we had that happen to somebody in Pasadena. Their house got burned down. Boy, brethren really pitched in for him. It was nice to see that. There was also a contrast because some brethren lived in apartment buildings and didn't have that much, but this person had a real nice home, and they lost the whole home, and a lot of brethren pitched in, helped them have a new home. But that news story hopefully helped some of you who were having a hard time praying about the news. Pray for those people, and maybe that'll begin to break the ice so you can start to do that try to pray about every news story that we present. So I do try to put in a light one or two once in a while just to pace it out and have some uplifting factor you can go to bed with, because we don't want to be all gloom and all doom, but there is a time to pray your heart out with tears before God. And he appreciates that. And the promise at the end of Luke 21:36, this is, listen, for those of us who are scattered, wondering, what do I do? What do I support? What do I do right now while we're scattered and don't have any one shepherd over us? Well, focus on Jesus Christ and his words, especially that are relevant to us right now while we're scattered, where he said, very clear instruction, something to do until we escape. Let me read it. I was going to paraphrase it, but, watch and pray always so that you may be accounted worthy to escape. But let's read the exact words right out of the King James Version. If you want to go there with me, it's chapter 21, Luke. We're talking about the book of Luke, and verse 36. Luke 21:36. And I'm going to back up. While you're turning there, I'm going to back up and start reading from verse 32. Well, let's go back one more. Verse 29. And he spake to them a parable. Behold the fig tree. And right here in this chapter he says, and all the trees. Not the fig tree only, but I want to focus you on at least one tree, the fig tree. But this applies to all the trees, he says at the end of verse 29. Verse 30. When they now shoot forth You see and know of your own selves that summer is now nigh at hand, is now near. Summer's near when you see the branches become tender and the little buds begin to blossom. As he says, I believe he puts it that way over in Matthew 24 in the parallel verse to this. Verse 31, we're in Luke 21. He makes a comparison and says, comparison to the fig tree and all the trees starting to shoot forth, to blossom. Likewise, when you see these things come to pass, what these things? We're in verse 30, 31, so just look ahead. Look to the beginning of the beginning verses in Luke 21, and you'll see that he's been explaining in plain language the seals from the book of Revelation. And while I tell you this, let me bring the first 5 seals forward in one of these charts. Let's see, this one right here. We'll zoom in on those first 5. The first 4 are active. And the 5th one is something he says you can avoid if you're watching these first 4. So, see, do I have a way I can put that on the screen behind me while I talk to you? Well, if I do, I have to kind of have to wide. But you can see them right in the center. There's those bars, white, red, black, pale green, and then the orange one for the Great Tribulation. And then the 6th one is the astro signs, the heavenly signs, and the sun, moon, the stars. And then if we were to go over to the full 7, see, you'll see that between the 6th and the 7th seal, there's the sealing of the 144,000. And then the 7th seal takes up more than half of the page, the full right half and more, because the 7th seal is comprised of a lot of stuff. It's comprised of all 7 trumpets. The 7th seal is the 7 trumpets. And the 7th seal, the 7th trumpet of the 7th seal is comprised of all the plagues, the last plagues, the 7 last plagues. The 7 last plagues are the 7th trumpet, which is also known as the 3rd woe. And that 7th trumpet is the last trump upon which Christ returns. And so he pours out those 7 last plagues after he returns. And we may be married to him at that moment in time, because we meet him in the air, and we may whisk up and have a marriage ceremony with the Father and then come back down here and, as his bride, help him do these things. So it's good that we be aware of what we're going to do after we're married to Christ, or after he returns anyway, at least. And that's the 3rd woe. There's 2 woes before that are the 5th and 6th trumpets, the 1st and 2nd woe. The 1st woe is the 5th trumpet. The 2nd woe is the 6th trumpet. The first 4 trumpets are the 4 winds. We'll go over these another time. I'm just giving you a highlight, an overview now. But your 7 trumpets are the 7th seal. And so that's why the 7th seal by itself takes up so much space. The 7th seal has got the 1/7 seal. You know, the 7th seal is just one seal. But it's comprised of all 7 trumpets, which are comprised of the 3 woes, and the last woe, the 7th trumpet, is comprised of the 7 last plagues. So a lot of stuff going on during the 7th seal, which is a year-long occurrance known as the day of the Lord. And a day in prophecy is as a year. So it's a year-long, it lasts a whole year. And the people who suffer the punishments of these 4 winds and 3 woes are, of the 7 trumpets. The people that suffer this day of the Lord, which is a time of God's punishment, the pouring out of God's wrath, are those who took the mark of the beast during the 5th seal, during the Great Tribulation. Those who worked on the Sabbath, those who bowed down their knee to the image of the beast, will suffer the day of the Lord, that 1-year period. Now, those who are left behind and refuse to work on the Sabbath, who refuse to bow down to the image of the beast, let's go ahead and come back now, because I'm just going to talk about those 5 seals in the center of this chart. The 5th seal being the Great Tribulation. Those during the Great Tribulation who bow down to the image of the beast or work on the Sabbath, receive the mark of the beast, they suffer the day of the Lord. They'll even beg to die, but God won't let them die. He's going to make them suffer His wrath and punishment for their eternal good, so that when they are resurrected, weak and humbled, they'll remember all that, and with Satan out of the way, and being able to compare the difference to seeing the millennium around them to what they knew when they were alive and disobeying God. They see the beauty of obeying God. They live in that beauty for a while. They will be likely to, why in the world did I ever go along with that Satan the devil and his way? There's a much better way. I repent. I'm going to live this way from now on. And they live it for a good number of years and prove themselves in it. And God will say you're ready for the transformation to a body which cannot sin. And so that's God's plan. He knows how to work it. He knows how to do it. He's got the power. He's got the plan where a good number of all men who have ever lived will be converted and live eternally. I say a good number because God clearly shows there are going to be some who are obstinate, who will not repent. And brethren, if some of you are postponing repenting because you think you're smart and you're hedging your bets, like you're saying, well, he ain't coming next week or next month or even a few months from now. We got a few more years. We even got another couple of decades to go. So I'm going to have my fun for now, and I'll repent when I know for sure he's coming. You're going to wind up. God says it comes on the whole world like a snare when we get down to verse 35. Let me read the intervening verses from where I left off. In verse 31, we were making a comparison to knowing that summer is nigh when you see the fig tree and all the trees start to sprout. Their little buds sprout and blossom. Their limbs, the branches become tender. You know, summer is near. He said, likewise, by comparison, you know that the kingdom of God is near when you see these things come to pass. And so I just asked the question, what things come to pass? The things represented by these first four seals that he's just been explaining in plain language here in Luke 21 and also in the parallel chapters, Matthew 24 and Mark 13. Parallel chapters saying basically the same thing, that the first seal, the white horse, represents false religion, with Christ saying that many will, let me go ahead and zoom into that, with Christ saying that many will come in my name, in fact saying that I, Jesus, am the Christ, and yet they'll deceive many. Now that's your first seal, the white horse. The second seal, depicted in Revelation by a red horse, Christ said in plain language, is war, and rumors of war and world war, like we finally had some 1900 years after he spoke this, when in 1914 we had the first round of world war, nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Ending in 1919, then we had a recess until, what was it, about 1938, 39. We had World War II break out till 1945. We're now in the recess between round 2 and round 3 of World War, and when round 3 breaks out, it'll become Europe will have united, and it'll be the final restoration of the Holy Roman Empire with the seventh and final king, the seventh and final head of a restored Roman Empire connected with the Vatican, so that it's called the Holy Roman Empire because of that, so-called holy. Your third seal in the book of Revelation is depicted by a black horse, which Jesus Christ described in plain language as limus, meaning famines or scarcity of food. And your fourth seal is depicted in Revelation by a pale horse with a rider on that pale horse whose name is Death, alongside whom rides Hades, hell, Hades, the grave. And Jesus Christ described in plain language the activities, the actualities, the happenings, the doings of this horse, primarily as loimus, meaning disease epidemics, pestilence, the plagues of Egypt. And he also said that between the third seal and the fifth seal, there would be seismus. That's the Greek word he used, which in the Greek English lexicons means seismic activity, commotions in the air, giving the example of gale force winds of all kinds, typhoons, hurricanes, tornadoes, etc. Commotions in the air, and it says also commotions on the ground, and it gives the examples of earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tsunamis, wildfires, floods, commotions on the ground. And in Mark 13, verse 8, Christ said between the third and fifth seal there would be terrake, roiling waters, mobs, seditions, trouble, but not your mega trouble, not the fifth seal trouble. So these first four seals are like the branches of a tree becoming tender, telling you that summer is nigh. The increased frequency and intensity of these progressive seals that began back during Christ's day. And as he said, as you see them begin to blossom, meaning intensify in frequency and in intensity, then know that the kingdom of God is near. Well, how near? Well, the next seal, the next major event in prophecy to happen is the fifth seal, the Great Tribulation. That has been explained by the references to it as being a time and half a time, or 1,260 days. The total time from the fifth seal to Christ's return is 3.5 years. 1 year of that 3.5 years is the day of the Lord. So when you subtract that 1 year from the 3.5 years, that leaves you about 2.5 years for the time period of this seal, the fifth seal over here on the far right side in our chart, the Great Tribulation. So that runs about 2.5 years. The day of the Lord runs a year. Then Christ returns during that day of the Lord upon the seventh trump. So, and interestingly, those of you who try to figure out times and dates, if that whole period of time is 1 year, as prophecy says a day in prophecy is, and this seventh seal is the day of the Lord, and if Christ returns on the seventh trump, which God's word says it does, and then it's going to take some time to pour out those seven last plagues. He's not going to do that in 1 day. That's going to take several days. Months. In fact, I think that's maybe 3.5 months or so of doing that part. He's going to spend some good time on those seven last plagues. So we don't know exactly where to peg everything. If Christ did return, as some of you expect, on the day of the Feast of Trumpets, well, and if there's still a portion of 3.5 years to go from the day of trumpets to the end of the 3.5 years, we're not going to know exactly when the 3.5 years began. Well, we're not going to be able to figure it out ahead of time. We're going to look back and say, oh, yeah, now we see how the pieces of the puzzle fit into the way God prophetically said they would. But until this happens, we won't. But we do know, like you said, you see these things that I'm telling you about happen with increased frequency and increased intensity. In other words, as if all the trees in the fig tree is beginning to blossom. When you see these first four seals I've been telling you about in this chapter, blossom, increase their frequency, increase their intensity, baby, you know the kingdom of God is near. All right, brethren, maybe I should use more reservation. I got the message even as I said that. And say, brethren, you know that the kingdom of God is near. I'm learning lessons too, brethren. I am. We're all in the same boat together. Listen, I appreciate the opportunity as one of God's end-time ministers to be able to speak to you via this medium, something that didn't even exist during Mr. Armstrong's lifetime. Now, television broadcasting existed, and God sure opened the door to that, to Mr. Armstrong, being able to purchase more time than any other religious broadcaster, and really share God's word with those who want it. And thankfully, many of those recordings have been preserved. We have a number of those on our website and our video archive. They're all over the place on the internet. Some of you and I, myself too, listen to We're Blue in the Face and study, and I still learn things. So I'm not criticizing. I'm encouraging the listening to Mr. Armstrong. As I do that, I'm still hearing things, even though I heard it before, that I didn't hear when I heard it. Does that make... To some of you, that will make sense. Some of you may say, what did you just say? Well, you can hear somebody say something, and you heard the words, but the meaning just either went over your head or went in one ear and out the other. It didn't attach anywhere. You didn't really get it. You heard it. By heard it, I mean you heard the words, but the sense of the words didn't grab hold of you the first time you heard it. Maybe things happen in your life, maybe with more prayer, maybe with God giving you more spirit. You listen to the same thing again, and all of a sudden, bells go off. Maybe in some cases, whistles also go off, as they should in some cases, where you hear Mr. Armstrong say this, oh, wow, I better stop doing this or that, or start doing this or that, Mr. Armstrong was an encourager of Luke 21:36. Watching and praying always. And then you've got the carrot. It doesn't necessarily mean pray with the words, and God count me worthy to escape, although you can't say that, of course, but he's saying pray always about these things that you're seeing happen daily now like never before, because they are increasing in frequency and increasing in intensity as well. Not just earthquakes, not just the fourth seal. I attach the seismus on the fourth seal because Christ said that would happen during that time period of the fourth seal, basically the fourth seal. Now, that third and fourth seal and second seal also become ultimate at the same time the fifth seal begins. Well, what the heck do you mean by that, Stephen? Well, what I mean by that is the prophecies in Ezekiel that say at the time when Ezekiel 6, verse 6, Ezekiel chapter 6, verse 6, Ezekiel 6:6, where God through Ezekiel says to the descendants of Joseph primarily, Ephraim, the UK including Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, maybe a few other places, those primarily. He says, and to Joseph's son Manasseh, the modern-day descendants in the U.S. as well. He says to the descendants of Joseph, UK and U.S., Ephraim, Manasseh, he says, if you don't repent of disobeying your Creator, and that means his commands, including the fourth and the seventh primarily, but all of them, the fourth being the Sabbath, ministers in this nation and in the UK, they preach the Catholic perversion of the Sabbath to worshiping on Baal Day, the day of the sun. And people believe they're ministers. They're deceived by their ministers. God says, whoa, whoa. Maybe these woes during the seventh seal are reserved primarily for those ministers. Woe to you who teach my people to err. And a lot of the ministers out there, they take it so lightly. Well, we're just going along with, that's what the people want to hear. I get my paycheck for that. And that's what the seminary I went to told us to preach. Now, they tell us that the seventh day is the Sabbath, but they tell us to preach to the people to worship as the Catholic Church taught us to do and established in the 4th century in the Council of Nicaea and Council of Laodicea and roughly 325 AD and some other council time. In that same time period, that Constantine endorsed to worship the sun god, Baal, on Sun Day, the day of the sun, and to forget the Sabbath, the great Easter Passover controversy, also the 4th century, where they really fought the Jews and made a law that said, if you Judaize, you are anathema to the church. And if you are anathema to the church, the government, the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, connected with the church, on behalf of the church, well, the government will put you to death. The beast doing that on behalf of the false prophet. They did that all along during the past 6 eras, the past 6 kingships of the Holy Roman Empire. They did it as a type then. The real fulfillment of that is coming during the 7th and final restoration of the Holy Roman Empire. It's coming big time, big martyrdom of God's saints for keeping the Sabbath primarily. So the ministers who taught our people to disobey God's Sabbath, they think nothing of it. Sunday's the day to worship. They make you feel bad if you're doing work on Sunday, you know. Not supposed to go to movies, not supposed to play cards. Now, if your boss requires you to work, you can work, but otherwise you don't be out doing your yard stuff and all that on Sunday. You get out and do that on the Sabbath so you can bug and disturb the true Sabbath keepers, you know, and interrupt their harmony and peace of mind on the Sabbath day when they're trying to rest from their week of work and worship God that day. While they're in their home, the neighbor's out there mowing his lawn, you know, with a big loud mower and blowers and weed eaters and what have you. That happens to, you know, even I got a lot of land, but I can hear them things down the road. Primarily, they do it on the Sabbath around here. And if they happen to do it while I'm doing a live stream, sometimes you'll hear that in the background. Well, Steve, how come you got this mower in the background during your live stream Sabbath cast? Well, thanks. Yeah, I do these out of my home. My studio's up on the 2nd floor of my home. That's thanks to my neighbors who mow their yards primarily on the Sabbath day, because the preachers of this world are telling people you don't have to keep the Sabbath. And then, because the Supreme Courts of our land pass all kind of laws endorsing sexual perversity, that's just gone crazy. That's gone absolutely crazy now. So people violate the 7th command. Adultery is rampant. Pornography is a form of adultery. And that sin initiates more from the tribes of Israel. I don't know if France beats us out in America or not, but pornography on the internet largely comes from those 2 countries and their peoples. Yeah, Russia does some of it too. And sometimes they find ways to dump it on you, that they'll put these little things that attach after you've gone to some website that's not related to sex at all. They'll attach something that, especially on your mobile devices, they got ways to slip that in where all of a sudden among your favorites, there's something you didn't put there that opens up pictures and videos of unclothed women. And it's kind of like, yikes, how in the world did this get here? I did not put that there, you know, so they exit out, thankfully. And then, but sometimes they put a virus in there that when you're trying to exit out, it just keeps popping back in there, and you got to keep at it, you know, which means, all right, your strength is big, especially for a man who, you know, God put it in us we have to resist that kind of thing, because He's put it in a man to find, you know, unclothed women attractive. Ladies, you need to be aware of that. You need to dress modestly. The women are encouraged to teach the other women. There's something you women can actively teach other women. Dress modestly, because, you know, God built a man so that if he sees flesh, why, the mind says that looks good, and it's like Eve out there with that Eve out there with that, I was going to say apple, but then I thought, wait a minute, it's not. It doesn't say it's an apple with the forbidden fruit. There's Eve out there with the forbidden fruit, listening to the serpent tell her, you won't surely die. This will make you as smart as God, and besides, this thing tastes better than any of these other pieces of fruit in this garden than any of them. And she said, and he's holding back on you. He knows you eat this, you're going to be as smart as he is. You'll know good and evil. As I read that, I say, boy, he really pulled a good one off on Eve with that, because in your right mind, those of you who have suffered evil, you say to yourselves, or we should say to ourselves, who in the world, who in their right mind wants to know evil and the suffering evil can bring? Brethren, some of us have suffered the results of evil of others, and sometimes we've suffered the evil of our own doings. And the cutting off of God's Spirit is an evil too. You'll be much more refreshed, much more happy with God's Spirit. And if you resist the temptation to do what you think you need and your body needs and you want to do, you'll wind up much happier in the long run. If you give in to it, I'm talking to brethren who tell me, I can't tell you who they are, but they tell me they've given in to women letting some guy hop in the sack with them because I needed a hug so bad. Nobody was showing me love and hugging me, and this man, he hugged me, and in order to get his hug, I had to let him do all the rest of this stuff with me. No, you did not. You gave in to evil. And then you see the people that do that. You watch them. You try to tell them, look, you need to repent of that, not do that again. And by repent, you really need to tell God, I am sorry I did that. Now, to help you, he may let you suffer some things, as I see happening to some people now. They're just feeling totally unloved. Well, they took love the wrong way, and now they're left empty. And God is letting them find out, oh, yeah, I got to do this the right way. And I got to resist the evil, because wrong is wrong. And to repent of wrong, you've got to know that don't work. That hurts you. That hurts other people. It hurts you, and it hurts the person you participate with in doing that evil. Oh, but it gave me the hug I needed. Yeah, well, you're going to pay for that. Down the road, you're going to pay for it. God is going to let you pay for it if you're not able to repent of it. And if you're able to repent of it, you will really despise the fact that you did it, and God will let you come to that if you don't, if you're not able to. In the doing of that, yeah, it's suffering, but realize God is helping you. He's helping you hate sin, which we need to do in order to be given the gift of eternal life. We have to hate sin. He's not going to pull a potential rebel into the family of God. Thankfully, brethren, that is something we can rejoice about. In the converted family of God, in the time after the resurrections, you're going to see all of your loved ones who died. So if you're suffering that and feeling like God took that family member away from me when I still needed him, ahead of the time I needed him, well, he may have done that for your good and for the good of that person and for the good of others too. And that person is, God knew they're going to make it now. If he let them live longer, something might happen. They'd flip that around. Or somebody or our enemy would flip that around on us. God sometimes let people die when, hey, right now they are going to make it into the kingdom. Let's seal it. Whoosh. That's a blessing. All right, now for those of us left alive, it's kind of like we sometimes feel like, God, why did you take, especially a parent, why did you take my parent? Well, maybe a mate too. Why did you take them out of my life right now? I was loving them and they're loving me and I needed that, and here goes the overweening. Normal mourning is good. Get yourself alone and do it. Cry your heart out. And there's a blessing in that. God sees, hey, I want to see my loved one again. And you seal that into yourself with the mourning. I want to see. You'll be able to uncap that and explode with joy when you see that person alive in a resurrection again. Hooray! Hallelujah! There you are. And the big hugs that will go along with it. Oh, what a wonderful time is ahead of us, brethren. Now, in the meantime, look at that chart. We are going, I got to get a chart where I can get them 4 blown up behind me instead of just having to transfer over to it like this, but let's go there. Yeah, we're going to have to suffer the effects of these 4 seals, and I was just trying to tell you, and I'm going to close up in a few moments here. I've been talking to you a long time. but I hope I've been encouraging you. We're going to have to suffer these first 4 seals and the ultimate fulfillment of the second, third, and fourth seal. Maybe I shouldn't say I should say an ultimate fulfillment, because I think God's going to do this twice. He's also going to do this at some point during the 7th seal, during the day of the Lord. But He's going to do it at the very beginning of the 5th seal, the Great Tribulation, in connection with Ezekiel 6:6 that I was just making a reference to you. I want to come back to you and say this. Ezekiel 6, Ezekiel 6:6 says that because of our disobedience, UK, US primarily, descendants of Joseph, because of our disobedience, all of your cities will be laid waste. That's what it says in Ezekiel 6, verse 6. And that's for us today. All of your cities laid waste could not have occurred before August 1955. So this is a prophecy for the annihilation generation, the generation that Jesus Christ spoke of in Matthew 24 and also Luke 21. He says the same thing where he mentions this generation shall not pass till all these things come to pass. All these things include what he said in verse 22 of Matthew 24. He says, except those days be shortened, cut short, no flesh would be saved alive. All life would be erased from the face of the earth except for Jesus Christ's promised return. Man is going to hit the buttons that blow up all them nuclear things and blow up all mankind, except that Christ's going to whip in here, stop some of them missiles, dead air, whoosh, and keep mankind from annihilating all mankind. But the fact that man could annihilate all mankind makes the verse in Matthew 24 and Luke 21 where Christ says, this generation shall not pass till all these things happen. Well, they have to be able to happen. It has to be possible for them to happen. And when it's possible to happen, that's the generation. So once men exploded hydrogen bombs with their testings in August 1955, it was proved then possible to annihilate all mankind. That then opened up both to the understanding of God's end-time apostle who announced what I'm telling you now. I'm not telling you something new that I came up with. I'm repeating what we were taught, which is logical, makes sense, squares with the Bible from which we can prove this. And so where Christ said, this generation shall not pass till all these things happen, then that establishes the fact that Ezekiel 6:6 is a prophecy for the end time, for us, for the annihilation generation. The generation that if it lasted 120 years could go from 1955 to 2075, but Christ says he's going to cut it short. And 120 may not be what God considers to be the length of a generation. There are other places that mention 100 years, mention 70 years, mention 80 years, and your definitions in the Bible changed from being only 20 to allow for 50, 70, 80, 100, or 120. You know how the definitions on a word, sometimes they give you 1 is this is the most likely, and 2 is possible, and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8, sometimes 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 19, 20 possibilities for a various word. You look up your word for generation, you'll see, hey, it can be 20 years, it can be 50 years, it can be 70 years, it can be 80 years, it can be 100 years, it can be 120 years, depending on which dictionaries you're looking at. And many dictionaries have those multiple choices. And more than one of them is correct, depending on how you use it and how you think. So, and God's left himself wide open as to that. He ain't pegged it down so we can say this is how long it's going to last. But we know it starts in 1955. We know the outset where God said in Genesis, man's years are limited to 120. That would be the wide open, greatest outset, taking it all the way to 2075. But God says he's going to cut it short. And also, you look at news right now where God says, compare it to the trees, the fig tree and all the trees, where when you see them start to blossom, summer's nigh. When you see these things increase with activity, with increased frequency and increased intensity, know the kingdom of God is near. And so, and you got to realize this point, it's going to happen like a snare. I got to go back to Luke 21, verse 35. Where it talks about it's coming like a snare upon the world. But I had left off at verse 31. So likewise, when you see these things come to pass, know that the kingdom of God is near, at hand. It's about to happen. And verse 32, he says, truly, verily, I say to you, here's the verse I was looking for, I was just quoting you. This generation shall not pass away till all be fulfilled. And all could not have been fulfilled, where Christ said in the parallel chapter, said all life would be erased from the flesh of all life would be erased from the face of the earth if he didn't cut it short. That couldn't have happened before August 1955. So now he says, this generation, the generation that could be annihilated, with the fulfillment of Matthew 24, verse 21, 22, where he says, except I intervene, all life would be destroyed from the face of the earth. Couldn't happen before August 1955. So August 55 forward is your annihilation generation, the generation spoken of in Luke 21, verse 32. And then verse 33 says, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. You can't just rip this out of your Bible. You can't just say, oh, well, he spoke that a long time ago. He went to sleep somewhere and forgot us, and just forget all that. My words shall not pass away. And verse 34, now listen, this is speaking to you right now. Christ saying, take heed. And he means that, brethren. He means what he says right here. My word shall not pass away. And he's saying, take heed, brethren, to yourselves. Take heed, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, with gluttony, and drunkenness. That means spiritually as well as physically, especially spiritually, where all the virgins went to sleep. Wake up, drink your coffee, spiritually. And the cares of this life, lest your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, gluttony, drunkenness, both spiritually and physically, and cares of this life, so that day come upon you unawares. For, verse 35, as a snare, like a trap that catches a bear. Chakum! Snaps on his leg, he's stuck. A snare, an opening in the earth somebody falls into, and it's just narrow opening net down there, closes up on you. You can't get out. A snare that pops you up in a net hanging from a tree. You can't get out. A mouse trap catches the mouse. Boom! Mouse sneaks in there to get the cheese. Wham! He's caught. As a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the earth. It doesn't just say the earth, it says the whole earth. Everywhere. So no matter where you are, you're not getting out of this. God says a snare on all the earth. That means it's coming at an unexpected time, even upon us who believe. We're going to think we got another week, 2 weeks, another few months. Some morning it's going to have happened. Boom! All the cities of the UK are blown up. Later that afternoon or the next day, boom! All of the cities of the U.S. are blown up. And that's where the fulfillment of these, I wish I could be on the screen with you when I zoom in tight on these. That's where the fulfillment of these second, third, and fourth seals happen at the beginning of the fifth seal. Because God says in Ezekiel that what is going to happen is that 1/3 of the people are going to die from the second seal, from war, from the missiles, from the direct missile explosions. 1/3 of the people die. Their blood blown apart. They've blown apart. Their blood all over the place. 1/3 die from the second seal at the beginning of the Great Tribulation, from the missiles of Ezekiel 6:6 that take out all of the cities of the UK and the US. UK including, again, Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and South Africa, and the U.S. Third of our people die from the direct hits of the missiles that lay waste all of our cities, Ezekiel 6:6, 1/3. Then another third die in the days and weeks following from the fallout of those missiles. They die by the third and fourth seals. They die from scarcity of food caused by the radiation, scarcity of food and water. People die from famine, the third seal, and from the lack of food and all that radiation and all the people dead around them and the horrifying, wrenching smell of dead bodies, which all those dead bodies, they can't get buried because people don't have food, they're weak, they're sick. A third of the people die from a combination of famine, scarcity of food, and pestilence. Pestilence will kick in as well to cause death because of those missile attacks of Ezekiel 6, all of your cities being laid waste. Third will die from the second seal. Another third will die from a combination of the third and fourth seal together. Famine and pestilence, disease epidemics breaking out because of the missiles. Where people didn't get killed directly from the missile, they suffer lack of food and disease. So you got 2/3 of your people dead now. Oh, okay, well maybe I'll be part of them third that are still alive. What happens to me? Well, if you're able to live through it, you're not taken to the place of safety, then what happens? Let me come back out here with you. Then what happens at the beginning of the fifth seal of the Great Tribulation, after these missiles go off and a third killed by the missile directly, second seal blood, another third are killed by the third and fourth seal, disease epidemics. The third who are left alive get taken captive, but not left in your own town, your own home, your own country. You're transported to a foreign country, is what we're told in Ezekiel. Placed in a country foreign to you, where you're held captive and you work every day as slaves. Maybe they'll provide clothes to you, maybe they won't. Those who love pornography and seeing people naked, you may just get to run around with a whole bunch of naked, starving people because they won't feed you, they won't clothe you, and they'll work you to near death. And many will die in slavery from lack of food and overwork, horrible conditions you're trying to live in, and bunk beds stacked up, and no room to move around. You're used to this luxury. Now you're in captivity in a foreign country, speaks another language. They treat you like dirt. And many will die in captivity. God's word says a few, though. A few feathers in the skirt, a few hairs in the skirt, live on over through the Great Tribulation, through the day of the Lord, into the time where Christ is reigning and ruling in the millennium, a utopian time. Mr. Armstrong, God's end time apostle, is referred to as the wonderful world tomorrow. And indeed wonderful, a real utopia under Jesus Christ. Those who get to live through all that misery into that will see a real turnaround, a real blessing. Now, what about for brethren who are called now? A lot of what I just explained applies to people who are alive and live who were not called. Because those who were called are going to be keeping God's Sabbath, even those who had a lukewarm attitude about it right now and maybe thought they knew everything in the world, they need to know anything. Get what, we don't need to listen to you, and we don't need to do what you say do, which is simply doing what Christ said do in Luke 21:36. That's the primary thing. I thump at everybody. That's what, as I ask God, what do I do, Father? Encourage my people to be doing the instruction Christ gave in Luke 21:36. That's the answer I get through fasting and prayer. So, and that'd be good for you to those, and that's. I'm just repeating what Mr. Armstrong encourages to do, as he repeated what Jesus Christ said in that verse for us to be doing. Watch And watch those things Christ was describing that are going to happen now in Luke 21, Matthew 24. He's describing these seals. He's describing all of them. But only the first 4 are active now. And Christ's analogy saying when they begin to blossom, when they begin to become increased with intensity, increased with great frequency and intensity increasing, know that the kingdom of God is near. Know that as God explained to us the next major event in prophecy, God explained that to us through his end-time apostle Herbert, speaking under inspiration, said the next major event in prophecy will be the 5th seal. The 5th seal, right there on that chart, the orange column, the Great Tribulation, which Jesus Christ said is a time of trouble so great that no time since the beginning of the world to that time, nor ever after, is going to be as bad as what is coming and what he described as the mega trouble, the Great Tribulation. But then at the end, if you said, I heard you, Steve, you've been talking about watching and praying in Luke 21, verse 36. Well, be sure you get the ending of it. Don't miss that part where Christ said, holds out the promise. He says, and watch therefore and pray always. Therefore, why? So that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall, future tense, shall come to pass. Well, what's going to come to pass next? Next is the 5th seal, followed by the 6th, the heavenly signs, followed by the 7th, the day of the Lord. So again, what's going to happen next? The 5th seal, the Great Tribulation, followed by the heavenly signs as a transition from closing out the 5th seal to going into the 7th seal, with the sealing of the 144,000 between the 6th and 7th seal. And the 7th seal being the day of the Lord. Those are the things ahead of us. And at the end of the day, toward the end of the day of the Lord, during the 3rd woe, at the last trump, when Jesus Christ returns, there'll be the pouring out of the 7 last plagues. A good reason to have some familiarity now with the 7 last plagues is because you are going to have a job in helping your husband to pour those out. So it would be a good idea when he comes for you to not say, oh, what do you mean we're going to do this to people? I told you all along. It's in the book. It'd be a good idea if you read that part of the book and know ahead of time what your husband is going to do, that he will want you to help him do, so that it's not strange and, oh, gag, I have to do this. No, you accept it ahead of time. We're going to be pouring out these plagues on people. And the first plague is this, the second plague is that, and the 5th, 6th, 7th plague is this other thing. Yeah, I'm going to help my husband do that to people so that they will learn obedience. They'll learn to obey and be able, when they're resurrected after all this, after all the pouring out of these plagues and they die from it, they'll be able to be resurrected and repent then and live forever with the rest of us as our children in the family of God. A happy family where these horrible things will not be happening because God and Christ know how to work it so that we're first of all human flesh, mortal, can hurt, can suffer, and then be transformed in the Spirit. So if you're hurting, ask God, what do I need to repent of? And then repent with your whole heart and trust him. And don't be something that's in God's way that's holding up things because he loves you so much. He holds up pulling it all together because I want you in there. I want to give you a chance, dumbhead, bonehead. Brethren, I'm speaking to you the same way Mr. Armstrong spoke to us when he said, brethren, I'm nothing, speaking of himself. And he turned on us and said, and you're nothing. Meaning altogether, we're in the same boat. We're all nothing except. And as many of you well know, Christ did a lot through the humility of Mr. Armstrong. As Mr. Armstrong humbled himself before God, which he mightily did, God did mighty, mighty apostle-like things through him. And as a wonderful example for us who have been called in, to me, the most wonderful era to be called in, other than perhaps the Ephesian era. But no, I even like this idea of this era much better than back then, because things are open to us now. They could not understand. They couldn't know who the 7 kings of Revelation 17:10 were. Of course, many of them had died by the time Christ gave that prophecy through the Apostle John in about 90 A.D., the Apostle John getting to live a long time on that island in a prison. Not the most wonderful conditions to be living in. And even he didn't know who even though he saw that vision and wrote it down, he didn't know who the 7 kings that he mentioned in verse 10 of Revelation 17, he didn't know who they would be. They hadn't even been born yet. They wouldn't even be born for at least another 400 or 500 years, from 90 A.D. to 554 A.D. Well, Justinian was probably born 20, 30 years before he restored the imperial empire in the Holy Roman Empire and recognized the supremacy of the Pope in 554 A.D. He was the first of 7 kings. Let's take a quick look at those. Let me see. How do I get to that? I think we're going to switch that to this, going to zoom out, and then over my shoulder here, starting at the top left over there, we got those kings. Let's see. Let's go in on that. And at the very top of that, we've got the 6 of the 7 kings that are mentioned in Revelation 17, verse 10. It says there are 7 kings. It says 5 are fallen. Well, the 5 who are fallen, the Apostle John, who wrote that verse in 90 A.D., he was writing that in a future perfect tense. It was future tense, as if it had already happened. But they hadn't even been born yet. So how would he know there's going to be 7? And he definitely wouldn't know who either the 7 or the 5 he mentioned that are fallen, as if they were already fallen. He wouldn't even know who. He couldn't know who they were. Again, they hadn't even been born yet. But the first of those 7 was this guy in the upper corner here, Justinian, who again restored the imperial empire in 554 A.D. and recognized the supremacy of the Pope. And then the Pope gets very involved, and you can see him in this portrait as the Pope is crowning the 2nd king, Charlemagne, here in this portrait. And then he's in there from now on as they crown the 3rd king, Otto the Great. And then down here on this next row at this side, the 4th of those 5 kings that are fallen was Charlemagne the 5th, followed by a very famous one who was the 5th king, Napoleon, who, although he was technically crowned by the Pope, during his coronation ceremony in Frankfurt, Germany, he grabs the crown out of the Pope's hand, and he was impatient, egotistical, narcissistic. He couldn't wait. He grabs that crown out of the Pope's hands, and he puts it on his head himself. And it was this crown. It was this very crown that is on display in the royal treasury in Vienna, Austria, right now. You can walk into the royal treasury and eyeball this crown yourself. You see it with your own eyes. It's in a glass cage, very thick glass. You couldn't break it with your hands, even if you used an axe. It'd be very difficult to break that thick glass. And there are guards in there. You're not walking out of that royal treasury with that crown. It's very well protected, being made ready, reserved for the 7th and final king. But you say, wait a minute now, Steve, you went through 5 kings that are fallen, and you're talking about this is now preserved for a 7th king. What happened to the 6th? Well, God's word says in Revelation 17, verse 10, where it says 5 are fallen, it is saying, and 1 is yet to come. Oh, 5 are fallen and 1 is yet to come. But you just said, we're looking for the 7th. Well, we are, because that verse, after it says 5 are fallen, it says, and 1 is, the 1 is, he's come and he's gone. He is no more. He's now part of 6 that are fallen. Let's go back to the chart. We'll go to the top part over here, and we'll go to that 6th one that after he made a concordant with the Vatican, He went into Ethiopia, conquered them, and then announced to the world he is Il Duce. He's now the new Roman Caesar, and he, as he said, he has restored the Holy Roman Empire. Now, it wasn't a glorious restoration, and so the world only took small note of it, but it did wind up in the newspapers, but not front page, such that after it happened, Mr. Armstrong saw it, and God revealed it to him to announce coast to coast on his radio broadcast. After this happened in 1936 is when this happened. Mr. Armstrong announced it coast to coast then that Mussolini had restored the Holy Roman Empire and become its sixth head, the one that now is. And he is the sixth head from 1936 to 1945. Can you imagine the impact on Mr. Armstrong saying, well, wow, this is happening right before us in our modern days today during these end times. And after him, the rest of Revelation 17 verse 10 says, one is and one is yet to come. Now, you know, you could be wondering while the one is, oh, well, is the one going to come while this one still is? Or are they going to shake hands and then, you know, or what? No, it didn't happen that way. Mussolini died on April 28, 1945, after being shot in the belly, as you can see in this picture here, along with his comrades and his mistress, and they were all hung upside down, as you can see here. They're hanging upside down from the canopy of an Esso gasoline station in Italy. And so April 28, 1945, boom, that ended Mussolini's reign as the sixth of these 5 kings that are fallen, and one is, well, now it's 5 are fallen and one more is fallen after 1945, and one is yet to come who will wear this crown after it's transported from Vienna, Austria, in the royal treasury. It'll be transported over to the second floor of the Romer building in Frankfurt, Germany. The second floor of the Romer building houses the Kaiser's Hall, the Emperor's Hall, where you can go visit it now and see portraits and statues of former kings, including these 6 kings who restored the Holy Roman Empire. You'll see lesser kings' portraits and statues in that building as well. And most likely, history will repeat itself. The Pope will fly to Frankfurt, Germany. They'll transport this crown to Frankfurt, Germany for the final fulfillment of verse 10 of Revelation 17, where it says, and one is yet to come. Brethren, this is going to happen most likely during our lifetimes, during our days, during the weeks or months or years ahead. I dare just hold back and refrain from saying decades, because years could include decades, but it may come upon us like a snare, as it does on the whole world, much more quickly than many realize. Certainly it's going to happen sooner than later, as I often kind of half-jokingly say, but I'm serious about that too. It may happen much sooner than people expect. So don't lolly-da yourself. Don't hold back from repenting. And don't hold back from doing what Christ said in Luke 21:36. Watch these things as they're increasing in frequency and intensity, these things being the first 4 seals, which are now active. And we're watching for them to play right into the snare. Bam, that mousetrap snapping shut, and the 5th seal commencing with World War III. Let's go back to this chart. Go back to this for a moment. I've got on this slide, this chart, the 7 elements that basically happened during the 5th seal tribulation. First of all, that crown will be placed on the head of the 7th king, the beast, who the Bible calls the beast. It'll be placed on his head by the false prophet. You know, a pope, whether the current one or one in the woodworks back in the scenes over there in Rome now that retired and may come back, or somebody else entirely. You know, we don't know yet till it happens. But some pope, as the false prophet, will fly to Frankfurt, Germany, hold the coronation ceremony, put this crown on the head of the 7th and final beast, who will then commence an activity in association with the Pope, beginning on the left side of this chart. It'll be the ultimate famine of God's Word. Why do I say that? Because right now we can still preach the keeping of the Sabbath. We can still observe the Sabbath. But when this great tribulation breaks out, when the seventh head of the Holy Roman Empire comes into position and power, he will, with the Pope, they will stop people from worshiping on the Sabbath. And they'll stop people from preaching that. Now, the exception to that will be the two witnesses who can destroy their enemies by fire coming out of their mouths. So that's the third of three elements that happen during this great tribulation. That crown being worn by a seventh king, that's first. Famine of God's word, that's second element. The third element is the two witnesses testify in spite of the famine of God's word. The fourth element at the bottom left side, greatest martyrdom of God's saints ever to hit the world, ever to hit mankind. This will be the real fulfillment of a martyrdom of God's saints. As Mr. Armstrong put it, it's going to make the former crusades and martyrdom of God's saints written about in Fox's Book of Martyrs look as if it were a picnic by comparison to the slaughter they're going to do during the Great Tribulation. You definitely want to escape this if you can, because if you're left behind, you'll be required to work on the Sabbath and bow down to the beast, to the image of the beast. And if you refuse to bow down to the image of the beast or work on the Sabbath, they'll announce you anathema. The Catholic Church will announce you anathema. The false prophet will announce you anathema. And the beast, the Roman government, will kill you. They'll martyr you. They'll cut off your head. They'll burn you at the stake. However they do it, torture you first. They will kill you. You'll be a martyr. Oh, yeah, you'll make God's kingdom. But there's a better way to get there if you want to repent now. And that's repent now by watching and praying always, so that the end of Luke 21:36, as the promise is there for you, so that you can be accounted worthy to escape this great tribulation. What's going to happen, what shall come to pass, the next major event in prophecy is this that I'm showing on this slide right now, the Great Tribulation. Another element of that Great Tribulation that's going to happen right near the beginning of it, as God's end-time apostle by inspiration told us, would be the commencement of round 3 of World War. So World War will break out again with round 3, and this time, I think that's the one Mr. Armstrong said is going to make World War II look like a picnic, he said, by comparison, because now they've got nuclear bombs and modern weaponry that just makes the other stuff look like it was a carnival, by comparison. The war that's hell that General MacArthur spoke of, you ain't seen nothing yet, folks, as compared to what can be done with the weaponry now available for round 3 of World War. And then it's also that promise that Christ spoke of, that you may be accounted worthy to escape. I've got that one down here as the 6th of 7 elements that happened during the Great Tribulation. Philadelphia will be flown, the Philadelphia church will be flown to the wilderness. That's the place where we'll escape, a wilderness. God promises that he's prepared ahead of time. And we're told in Daniel 11, verses 40, 41, 42, that the only place on the face of the earth that is protected, that is out of the reach of the beast, is a triangular, or not a triangular so much as a tri-regional area that Daniel describes as the biblical land of the children of Ammon, Moab, and Edom. And with Petra being right there at the south edge, suburb area of Edom. And all of that just east of the river, the old Jordan River, or the waterway between what is now called Lake Tiberias and stretching down to the Dead Sea. All of that just to the east of that in Jordan is that old biblical area of the land of the children of Ammon, of Moab, and of Edom. All that is contiguous area right there. Big old, wonderful, beautiful area. But it's wilderness. It's a desert area. And but that's going to be outside the reach of the beast, and that's very likely going to be the wilderness to which the Philadelphia church, those in it who are accounted worthy to escape, will be flown, as Revelation 12:14 says, on the 2 wings of a great eagle. And whether that mean literally or symbolically, we'll find out. But being accounted worthy to escape, God will let you know. Don't worry about it. And then the seventh element that happens, there will be some who are not accounted worthy, and that's described in our last part of this, on the far right side at the bottom of this, where it says Laodicean era of martyrdom commences. And as God's end-time apostle instructed and told us, and there's no apostle that's come along who's had the authority to change the instruction or the doctrine or the formality of an era begins. And it's an era of martyrdom. So those who try to say, well, the lukewarm attitude in many brethren is already here. Well, it was already here while Mr. Armstrong was alive, too, during, an era that we understood to be the Philadelphia era, a time period that continues without a head or faithful replacement head. It continues while we're scattered. It continues until those of us who are scattered, who are accounted worthy, are gathered up by Christ and taken on the wings of the two wings of a great eagle to a place of protection, of nourishment, of safety, final training for 3.5 years during the Great Tribulation and beyond, during the 2.5 years of the Great Tribulation and the year of the day of the Lord, in that place of safety, in, cave land. But much better there than in a bunk bed, naked and unfed in slavery, with most of those people dying or being martyred. And yet those who are martyred, the 1 Thessalonians 4:17 says, they rise first. The dead in Christ rise first. So there's a certain honor and blessing in having been a martyr, one who keeps God's laws and keeps it even against being killed as a martyr. There is a blessing in that. However, it's a knee-knocking blessing, and some of you won't make it. Some of you, if you had to face that, would cave in. So listen, what I'm saying to you, it's much better. Repent now, get in the pressure cooker. Watch daily. Make yourself pray about the news you see. Even if you have to write down a few notes and say, okay, God, this happened over there, and I'm praying about it. Give me the heart about what happened over there. And then watch him open your heart. He'll honor that kind of prayer. He'll write your name down in the book saying, these people were praying. So they are, as we promised them, their names, we're writing them down. They are going to be accounted worthy to escape. We'll come and get them. We'll have an angel come and get them. And we'll let you know. We'll let you know what to do. Hop in those eagle's claws, or hop on this jet airplane, or this chariot of fire, or just hold your breath while we whirlwind you up through the clouds. However, John, we're going to look forward to seeing how that happens, aren't we? All right, I'm speaking to one of you right now. But listen, brethren, I want to speak to all of you as I close. There you go. That's the overview of what's coming during the fifth seal. And what happens just ahead of that fifth seal is the fact that out of these 4 seals that are active now, at the beginning of the fifth seal, we'll see the second and third and fourth seal really blossom. I mean, really become to their full of fulfillment, with missiles killing 1/3 of the people in the UK and the US and the cities I mentioned to you, all of the cities being laid waste. And then 1/3 of the people dying days, weeks, or months after that from the fallout, the radiation from the missile attacks, from the third and fifth seal, from famine and pestilence that spin off from the second seal of war, the direct missile hits. 2/3 of our people dead from that, 1/3 being taken captive into probably over to Europe, to a foreign land, because Assyria, modern-day Germany, and Australia will be at the head of that. And then a few people of those third that are taken captive being able to remain alive through that and live on over into the world tomorrow. All right. Now, with that, I'm going to remind you that there are a few people who need your prayers because they feel unloved. Your prayers could help God help them turn around, could help them repent from, things they've done which make them feel unloved, because they most likely have committed sins that have cut them off from God. But when you feel cut off and unloved, you know, with brethren's prayers and a little showing of love by brethren, then it may make it easier for that person to say, God, I see it. I sinned. I'm sorry. I'm hurting. I don't want to hurt like this no more. So pray for your brethren that they may be helped. And brethren, look, I'm doing things God expects me to do, I need to do that help my health. You can pray if you want to. God help me, you know, or you can let me learn the lessons and let me try to change my eating and improve it even better, and to be more reserved in a calling He's given me. And some of you I may have offended. Yeah, I do apologize, and I hope you see that God Himself is helping me repent and know what I need to do, and you can pray. Hey, God, hey, thank you. He does need to do that, so help him. I'm all for that, because, yeah, I'd like it if he would act more reserved in this way or that way. So, yeah, you can pray for me in that. God will take you up on that. But I appreciate it if you throw in there a request to be merciful on him. When I ask him to punish me, I try to always remember to ask God, be sure and do that with great mercy. Spank me if I need it. Do the spanking. But please be merciful about it. That's a prayer you can all pray for yourselves too. You know, because David gave the example of praying that God, show me my secret sins and help me refine so that you are pleased, and that you and Jesus Christ, our husband in waiting, our husband to be, is pleased with the body, the bride you are fitting, shaping together for him, fitly framing into a beautiful temple. We are, as God explained to us through his end-time servant Herbert, we are, his end-time apostle Herbert, we are that spiritual temple, that temple to which Christ will return, a spiritual temple, not just a physical temple. Got to sign off, brother, and it's time to cut. Thank you for joining me. I wish you a wonderful rest of the Sabbath. I got a friend I'm going to go down and fellowship with this afternoon, and I hope you can do some of the same with some fellow brethren, family members. Spend time in God's Word. I hope that I've helped you be edified today. We didn't play anything with Mr. Armstrong. There's some stuff on the internet you can go get. I'm not only opposed to that, I'm very much encouraging of that. And we'll work him in, but I felt inspired. I needed to talk to you today, and that's what God has inspired me to do. And I hope you'll join us during the week as we perform a service to help you fulfill the instruction Christ gave all of us to do in Luke 21:36. Doesn't matter how you do it, but I got a service that can help you do the watching, where we spend the day looking over this stuff. I need my health back so I can do that more fully. I need some things around here cleaned up too that'll help me do that more. We're getting there. We're working on it. But we provide that service to help you watch what we should be watching, and then go get on your knees and pray about it so that your name can be written down as one who is accounted worthy to escape that fifth seal just down the road. Just down the road, you'll see the second, third, and fourth seal really hit with those missiles from Europe as they hit every city in the UK and the US. Destroying, laying waste all our cities because of the disobedience around us that is not changing. You know, we wish for it, it ain't happening. Be ready for the missiles. Be watching and praying. Brethren, I encourage you, be accounted worthy to escape. All right, that's it. I've hammered that at you now, so go have a wonderful afternoon. Join us for Nightcast during the week, and pray for one another, brethren. Let's all, best we can, as we are scattered. Some don't recognize that because they got these groups out there where they just think, we just continued where we left off from Mr. Armstrong. Our guy's the new Mr. Armstrong. And the brethren in those groups often just fail to recognize there's more body here and there and everywhere elsewhere. And they fail to recognize the overall fact that we're all scattered right now. God didn't just move over here or over there in one of these more than 1,000 different group places. We are scattered. But if you focus on Luke 21:36, you can have some comfort from God's Spirit, and he sees you doing that. He ain't got no choice. He's promised you would be accounted worthy to escape. If you do that with your whole heart, pray after you watch. Join us on Nightcast. Join us again next Sabbath, brethren. And let me get the slide ready to punch up to sign me off here. We'll say join us next Sabbath. I think that's this one. And so I'll say this has been your servant for the day, your host here, Stephen Lloyd Gilbreath, on the live Sabbath stream. Until next time, have a wonderful rest of the Sabbath, brethren. Thanks again for joining me. And if you got friends who need second Passover, they got a couple weeks. It's 2 weeks from tonight. Second Passover for those who didn't take the first and who need it. Just pray you'll find the friends that need it and tell them they can join us here, and we'll be doing it live. All right, till next time, brethren, join us again Nightcast. Join us again for Sabbath service next week. And until next time, so long.